Boom. All right. Today we're going to talk about basically the onset of listing a house. When you get a phone call from somebody about, hey, I need to list my property. Today we're going to talk about what you actually do when that happens, right? Like from taking the phone call, things to say, to verifying who the owner is of the property, to research you do before you go, to what you actually look for on that appointment, and then kind of like talk a little bit more about the listing checklist. Again, if you have questions, please speak up. I'm going to try to watch the chat as much as I can. Sometimes it gets a little bit, I miss it. So don't be afraid to speak up. All right, let's start off with actually just an overview of the process itself. Look, when you start in real estate, or if you're in real estate, everybody knows that having a great process, it keeps you from missing things. Then it really shows people that you're working with that you're a professional, because you go through a system, right? And that's what they want. They're hiring you to be organized. So having a system in place is is imperative. You got to have it. A basic process for somebody that calls you that wants to list their home is, first of all, just do a preview of the home. And the reason you do a preview of the home is you've got to see the condition of the house. Is it in good shape? Is it in great shape? Does it need repairs? Um, what have they done to it? What they're taking with them? You got to have that conversation. I strongly suggest you don't do numbers without going to see the property. You got to determine, maybe they've added a huge deck, maybe they added a pool, and you can't see that by looking at the GIS. And those could easily change values to the property. And the other thing you're doing when you're going out to preview the home is you're getting to know the seller, so that whenever you cover numbers, you know how to do it. Meaning, you know what to say, you know how to present things, um, and their communication style. We'll talk a little bit more about that. You're going to do the property research, like look at covenants, look at permits, look at previous sales. We're going to talk about all that kind of stuff. You'll complete a market analysis and then put together a net sheet to show them what they're going to make. You'll cover all this with the seller, sign listing docs, get photos. Then you enter the property in the MLS and start marketing it. That's a basic process for listing a house. Now, each one of these, obviously, they have their own little minutia. We're not going to get into the part from past really the doing the property research, because we don't have enough time to get into CMAs, marketing the property. Those are going to be different classes that I'll be doing coming up. Like next week, we're doing one on listing the property, and actually marketing the property, not listing it, but marketing it. So let's talk about handling the call. Someone reaches out to you and says, I'd like to sell my house, right? There's some basic information you got to get from them. And a great process is simply, first of all, when they call, explain the process. Look, appreciate you calling. One of the first things I need to do is I just got to come by and take a look at the home. Then after that, I'll put together an analysis that's going to show you what your home will sell for, how long it'll take to sell, and what you're going to make on the home. So if you were going to sell your home, what are the three things that you would want to know? Those are the three things you'd want to know, right? And most homeowners, when they get ready to sell their house, they really don't know what they want to know, what information they need. And when you tell them that, it kind of sets things up so that they know what to expect, and they're going to get all their answers answered, or all their questions answered. Once you explain that, then you simply ask for the address. What's the address of the home you're looking to sell? And they'll tell you 123 Main Street. After that, you're going to find out, are they living there? It's huge, right? A lot of times we get the address, we rent up the property, and we're like, oh shit. Or they tell us it's rented, or they say it's tenant occupied, right? And it kind of makes you look like you don't know what you're doing if you just say, what's the address? All right, well, I'm going to come out tomorrow, take a look, or when would you like me to come by? And they say, well, it's rented. And, it's an easy mistake to make, but again, the more organized you are, the more people want to work with you, right? So you got to find out who's living there. Simply ask them, are you currently living in the home? Right? If They say, no, we actually live up in New York. There's no one living in it right now. It's vacant. Okay, awesome. So how do I get in? Does the neighbor have a key? Is there a lockbox in the house? Well, we have the keys here. Cool. Can you send them to me? Okay. Ask them to mail you the keys. If they mail you the keys, do you think they're talking to other people? Highly
No.
unlikely. Highly unlikely, right? That's an old trick, and I'm telling you, it works every time. Mail me the keys. Because
Can
they
I
mail
say
you.
some? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
About the keys, make sure they send it in some sort of like from the post office, like brown envelope, because I've had a client mail keys regular mail and they will not make it through the machine.
I can tell you the mail system is terrible lately. Yeah, yeah. I would even almost tell them to do some sort of tracking just so it doesn't get lost. But have them mail you the keys. That's a great way for a vacant home. If they say it's the neighbor, that's awesome. How do I get in touch with them to meet them? Right? And they may coordinate that with you. They may say, well, we're going to be able to get out there. I mean, if you want to go out tomorrow at 12, I'll make sure they're there. Sure. Awesome. Cool. Uh, if it's tenant occupied, right, you got to find out who's managing the property. They say, well, I've got a tenant in the house. Okay, great. Who's managing that? Are you managing that? Is there a company? If they say, well, we've got a property manager. Okay, who is that? Can I get their contact info? And then you're going to ask them when the lease expires. Look, if they have a property manager, you're going to also preface some things with the homeowner. If somebody tells me, hey, house is rented and it's ABC property management, awesome. What I'm going to do is I don't ask them for the information because I can usually find it, right? You can if you like, but you just saying that you're going to call them and you know the information makes it look like you're experienced in the area and you know what's going on. So what I would normally do is I would tell them, that's awesome, but understand, I'm going to reach out to property management. They're probably going to want to hear from you so that they can give me information about your home, like the tenant and that kind of stuff. They're going to want your permission. So if you could shoot them an email and maybe copy me on it, here's my email address, and just let them know that you're working with me to sell your home so that there's no questions when I do reach out to them about getting information about the tenant and your lease and that kind of stuff. And I'm telling you, that does a lot more things, right? It sets the tone with property management that they've already got a real estate agent, so they're not going to try to put it to one of their agents because that happens a lot. If it's not with Seacoast Rentals, property management companies, they want to keep them with their office, so they will try um, to get it with one of their agents. So ask that question, can you please reach out to property management and just copy me on the email, let them know you're working with me, and let them know it's okay to talk to me about your home. I'm going to reach out to them and get a time when I can go and view the home. And hopefully they'll give me the tenant's information and maybe they want to buy it. I don't know. We'll see. But I just, that's, you got to figure out how you're getting in the house and who has the control of the home, whether it's the owner, it's vacant, the neighbor, or that's tenant occupied and it's property management. One of the things I did early on is I would get so excited that I'd forget to get the seller's info. I mean, I'd have to go back on the phone and get caller ID because I didn't even get their email. Right? We get so excited and tied up and rolling in the process that we forget to get their information. Um, in the back of the concierge book, or if you need one, there is a first contact form, and I can drop one in the chat. But it's great because it uses, it basically asks you to get all this information. So when you talk to somebody, make sure you don't forget to get their name, their phone number. If they don't live here, what's their current mailing address? This is all going to be important when you start doing property verification. Okay, because we got to verify that they're the owner. And if they don't live here, right? They're out of state. They got to sell their house. They want to get it sold quick. Awesome. Can I get your name? Can I get your phone number? Can I get your email address? Right. Don't forget to ask them their full name. They say, "Hey, it's Jim. I got to sell my property 123 Main Street." Awesome, Jim. Then you go through this, and then when you get to their contact information, Jim, I'm sorry, can I get your full name again? I missed it. Get their full name. Can I get your email address? This way we can communicate that way also. And what is your good mailing address for you? We may need it when we get to the part with the attorney and that kind of stuff when we get through the process. Ask that information, right? Set a time to meet them or view the home. And then before you hang up, I'd always make good practice to ask them how they got my info. Hey, just curious, how'd you get my phone number? I love that you called. I just want to thank whoever sent you to me. Oh, yeah. You know, Jasmine up the street, she gave me your info. She said you helped them with their house and they thought that you were awesome. Cool. I'm going to make sure I reach out to Jasmine and thank her because she just now became an A in my database, right? So now I got to update two things in my database. I got to put this seller in my database, and I've got to go ahead and I've got to call Jasmine and thank her for referring them to me. Put her in an A and do a follow up to call back and get to know her more and stay in touch, right? Because if they're sending people to me, that's the best part. Those are the best ones. Any questions on handling the call? Awesome. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to verify ownership, right? There are so many scams today. You've got to verify that whoever's calling you is the owner. Some easy ways to check, right, is just put their phone number in forewarn. All of you have forewarn, right? And if you don't, get it. And let me log in and I'll show you what it looks like. This is an app that you put on your phone, or you can do it on a computer. I'll put mine in. So if I were to call you about selling a property, it's going to come up with all these different folks. And I gave you my number. And you'd be like, okay, that's him. And then I can come in and I can look at address history. And it's going to show me an address, all these addresses that are related to me, right? So I would want to make sure that one of these addresses on here, if I was selling that property, well, so far we check out, right? It's the right name that they gave me. That's the current address that they gave me, and this is the property that they want to sell. So I'm good to go. I've done my verification. The other thing you're going to want to do is check names on the tax records and on the deed. Make sure that the same name they gave you is on the tax record and on the deed. Sometimes people call for a family member or a friend. You got to make sure you're talking to the person that actually owns the property. If they don't live in the home, again, verify their current address. So when you pull the tax record up, it looks something like this. Actually, I have that in this next slide, but I'll show it to you again. When you pull the tax record up, and I'll show you how to get this, it has like the name of the person that called. That should be the name of the people that called you. That should be their mailing address. And this is the address of the property they're wanting to sell. Okay. So far, everything checks out, right? Forewarned checks out. Tax record checks out. They own this property. I'm good. I don't have to dig any deeper. I'm good. If any of these fail, you need to dig deeper. You need to come see me. You need to go see Jenny. We need to look into it a little bit further. Again, if any of these don't match up with the caller, look up the owner's information and call them to make sure it's them. So what I mean by that is you go into the tax record and you find the owner's name, right? Then you could go into forewarned, and I would go by search by name, and I would put in the name, and I would just simply put in the city, and I would put in the state. Now, since there's a property associated with this person, it should come up, right? Comes up with the same ones. And I would click on each one of them. I would go through their address history, and I would say, okay, well, that's the person that actually owns the property. That's not the person that called me. Now, You could find the phone number and call them and verify and let them know, hey, someone's reaching out to sell your property. Are you the one that owns the property? Are you planning to sell it? Right? If you can't find it here, you can go to another site that's called True People Search, and it is free. And then you just put in their name. Let's see what I had. Road, Jacksonville. Well, that didn't come up with anything. Not goodness, because put it over here. Back to LNC. I'm gonna view details. 1969 gives me all this, and I can go through here. That's my current address. There's phone numbers. You can see this is all free, right? There are other sites that you can go to that you pay, but True People Search is free to where you can do the research to find a phone number to call somebody to make sure they are the really wanting to sell the property. So either use Forewarn or use True People Search and look it up. Any question on verifying ownership? Because I'm telling you, it's huge. It happens a lot on land, but it's not just land, right? We're seeing it on resale properties, usually properties that have people have owned for a long time, because then it's a good story. I moved out of state, haven't lived in a home for a long time. It's vacant. I just need to get rid of it. It's my parents and whatever. Okay, great. Look, here's my email, here's my phone number. My name is, Al Wagner, and I'm really not. So make sure that, the main thing is that phone number and then the address. And if the phone number doesn't match if they're calling from, you need to call the person. This is again sample the tax record. It has the property address, the owner's information, and their mailing address. That's why I ask for the mailing address when they call me, because this mailing address should match. Now, it doesn't always match. A lot of people move, they rent their home out, and they do not update their address for the tax records, the tax office. If they have not lived in it for a while, it ends up getting updated because they'll get notification. The tax office will end up knowing that it's rented and they'll update it at some point. But it's not automatically updated. A homeowner needs to call in and update the tax office when they move out that it's no longer their primary residence. Again, before you go out to the listing, there's some research you need to do, right? You need to look in the MLS. And I look to see if there's any previous sales. I'll put in the address in the MLS and I'll see if there's any previous sales, any information in there that may help me when I go to talk to these folks. So I get the phone call, right? After I get the phone call, I've done the property research to make sure that they are the owner. Now, but I haven't even been out to look at the house yet. Okay. Haven't gone that far because I wanted to research to make sure that they're the owner. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the research before I go out. And some research I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the property in the MLS to see if it's sold previously and all the data that's in the MLS, who it was, that kind of thing. And I'm also going to do a search of sales in the area so that I'm familiar with the market around that area. I don't want to do a full CMA right now because I don't want to go into it with a preconceived price. I don't want to go in there so that if they ask me what it's going to sell for, I don't want to have to tell them I don't know when I know. So I will look. I may get a summary of sales for the area. I'll show you that in a minute. But I don't want to run a CMA right now. It doesn't matter to me what it's worth because I don't know the condition that it's in. And if I take numbers out right now and it's a lot better, I'm going to look terrible. and because they're going to expect more. If I go out and the house looks terrible, well then I'm setting myself up bad because I'm telling them it's going to be priced higher than what it should be because of the condition. So do a little bit of research. It's basically for your knowledge, right? And looking at properties around that house, what they sold for. Because when you go out to talk to them, the conversation probably will go about a neighbor that sold or something like that. And if you're like, oh yeah, oh I didn't know that, or there may be a pool in the community, there may be boat, RV storage, things like that. You need to know all that because you don't want to go into a community that you haven't been to before and not understand it. You're in real estate, they're hiring you because you know the market, you know what's going on. So do a little research before you go. I also check the GIS. I want to see if the house is in a flood zone, if there's maybe any encroachments. I'm going to show you all this in just a second. Why do you think it's important if the house is in a flood zone? Why do you think it's important before you go? Let you check that. Anybody?
They'll need flood insurance if it is in the flood zone.
You want to see, we're going out to this listing and we're going to ask them, do you have flood insurance? Right? Because if they have flood insurance, then I'm going to find out how much it is because I need to know when I go to sell it. So a buyer is going to ask me, and it helps me know. If it's in a flood zone and they say, no, we weren't required to, okay, that helps me too. But I don't know that unless I go out. They may not even know that the back of the house is in a flood zone. But I need to talk to them about it if it is, because I'm going to have to disclose that when we list it. And all these things help you when you list a property to where you don't have these problems later. Those of you that listed a few properties, if you've ever listed one where it was in a flood zone, and then you go to tell the seller, look, the back of the property is in a flood zone, we have to disclose that, and you do it right before you go on the market, I'm sure the seller was pretty upset, especially if they didn't know. Because no one told them that when they bought the house. And they don't want to disclose that because they feel a buyer is not going to want to buy the home. Nope, you gotta make sure that you talk about that. We'll look at encroachments. We did the survey class last week, I think it was, and that's huge. I know I spelled that wrong, but anyway, when you look for encroachments, you need to make sure that if it looks like there may be any, again, the GIS isn't a one-all tell-all. It's not going to tell you for sure that there aren't any encroachments, but if it looks like the garage is in a neighbor's yard, you might want to ask them when you go out to the listing appointment, hey, do you have a survey of the property? Because my preliminary review looks like that garage is on the neighbor's. And they're going to say, no, it's on this property. Okay. Did you get a survey when you bought it? No. My agent told me everything was good. Okay. All right. Well, and then you have to have a conversation with them. Look, when you list a property, you do all this work on the front end, right? Because your job is to make sure that it's a smooth sale and the buyers or your seller, I'm sorry, is aware of everything that's happening that could happen with the house. Now, you're not going to talk about every scenario, but anything large that could affect the sale of the home, like an encroachment, a flood zone, repairs for the home, you got to talk to them about that beforehand. Your job isn't just to list it and market it. It's to be the educated advisor to help them through the process. You're going to look at the tax record and pull the property info. And also you're going to pull the sketch. We did how to measure a home yesterday and talked about the sketch and how to draw it. And I think some of y'all realize it's not as easy as it is to sit and sketch out the house and the dimensions in order to get, write the measurements down because you're required to show your work. I'll show you what that looks like because you can actually just print the sketch and then go out and verify all the measurements and do your work on it. It saves you time, but if you're terrible at artwork and you're terrible at drawing these things, it'll help you a lot. But understand the property tax record sketch does not replace you doing your own and you verifying the information and showing your work. We talked about community info. So let's look at what the research looks like. So I'm going to go to RE reference. And the first place I'm going to start at, by the way, I updated it at the bottom and I added in the link to True People Search. So if you want to do a search on a property or on an owner, and get a phone number. I've added that to the bottom to where if you didn't write it down, it's there so you know where to get it. So on RE reference, I'm going to come down and I've looked in the MLS. Well, we're going to pull the MLS up. I'm sorry. And I'm going to put in the address up here of the house that we're looking to list. I know the one I'm thinking of isn't in here. Nope, that's not in there. Let's just do this one. So we'll do this one. It closed. I'll click new. And all I'm looking at is when they bought it, what they paid for it. Don't really care about anything else. This is a house. They bought it. Gives me an idea of their square footage, what they purchased it. And then I'm just looking when they bought the house. So they've been in it for 6 years. That's cool. Gives me a good idea of a little bit about the property. I may go through and look at the photos to see the condition of it whenever they bought the home. Obviously, it says similar photos, so they bought it when it was built brand new, right? But I'm just going to go through and look at these photos if it's a resale, because then when I go out, I can comment on things like, wow, you painted the cabinets. They're like, yeah, because then it shows that I'm a professional, right? That I've done my research and I've looked at things. I'm telling you, little things like this matter when you go to list a property. It helps you tremendously. Okay, shows you're the expert. Shows that you are a consummate professional. So look in the MLS, right? The second thing I go to is going to be the GIS, which is here. Let me go back to RE reference. Then I'll come down to GIS. Anybody have an address they want me to look up? Otherwise, I'll just pick one. Okay, I'll just pick one. So I'm going to put in this address. I did a search down there, and it's going to pull up the area. And then I'm just going to click on a property. Let's just click on, say, let's say this one right here. Okay. I can't really tell a whole lot just by looking at this. So if I go up to this right corner where it has base maps, the drop down, and I hit 2024 aerial, it's going to give me an aerial view of what's going on with this property. So if I was going to look to sell this property at 135 Half Moon Church Road, it looks to me like we got some things here, right? Is this the same owner? So if I click on it, it tells me who the owner is. Okay, it looks like it's a Jean Jarman. Does she own this sliver? She owns that one. That's the same name. It's not letting me select the one in between, so I don't know what that is, if that's an easement or what. So that may be a conversation when I go out to talk to her that it looks like there's a sliver in here, and I can't really tell. See, it's not letting me select it. These two properties are, but that may be some sort of an old easement that we know no idea what it is. We have no idea what it is, I mean. So that would be a good conversation piece when I go out. I could simply print this and highlight it, and then I could come up in this top right and I can print it out. It's going to ask me what layout I want, landscape, PDF. I can hit the title and then export map. And then I could take that with me when I go out, and then it could be a good conversation piece. You know, it looks like, you know, you have 3 parcels here. Do you know anything about that? Is that an easement? Nope, I don't know what that is. Okay, well then I'll have to do some more research. So once I have looked at all this, I'm going to come over here to the left and I'm going to click on property record card. And that's going to pull up the actual tax record for this property. And it gives me their name, their address, right? That's the address of the parcel. That's their mailing address. So they live in this house. It gives me a little information about the property. It's on 0.44 acres. Looks like this thing was built. Oh, those are all 1966. So that thing's been there for quite a bit. Here's the sketch. This gives me the sketch of the property so I can print this out. I'm not going to go off of these numbers. I'm going to measure everything myself, but it saves me from having to try to draw it. I can print this and take it with me, because then when I'm there, right, I can see if there is a building over here or something that's closed in, That's not on the tax record. That tells me that they did an addition and they didn't pull permits. Because if they pulled permits, it would reflect here. Do you think that's going to be an issue when they go to sell? Anybody? Well, I'm going to tell you it is. It's going to be a big problem because you won't be able to use that square footage, heated square footage when you're determining value for the home. As mad as they may be or whatever they may be, you can't. It tells me when the house was built. It tells me the last time it was remodeled, 1985. They pulled permits to do a remodel. And these A, you see A, and then it has B, C, D, E. If you come down here, it tells you, right? MA, I believe, is main area. Then you have single family B, which looks like an addition they did over here. C, that's a utility room, so that's probably heated square footage. D, that's a front porch. E, that's a big carport behind the house. So at least, and I can verify that. If I go back to the GIS site, it looks like it's a house. There's the carport, so that's probably right. The other thing I could do would be, if you all use Google Maps, right? So I could come into Google Maps. This is really cool to do research for a house that you've never been at. I could do the property. Let's do 135 Half Moon Church Road. It's going to pull that up. I'm going to zoom in. And down in the bottom right corner is this little dude, right? If I click on him, all these blue areas is where Google went through and they took a video of everything. Well, over here is a front view of the house. You can see that up here. But if I take this guy and I drop him, I can just see how I've got him dangling here. If I take him and I can just drop him right here on the road, it gives me a street view. And then I can turn and I can have an idea of what I'm walking up to. I can have an idea of the house that I'm looking for whenever I'm going out to this appointment. Because I've probably never been on this street. I've probably never seen this house. So at least I have a good idea. Looks like there's two driveways, right? And if I come across, I don't know if I can see, these arrows help me navigate around. I can zoom in. Looks like, yep, there's a carport back there, right? But I can at least get a little bit of a lay of the land. Your job when you go on a listing appointment is to find anything or to look for things that could be an obstacle for the seller to sell. It could be something that's going to prevent the home from selling or getting financed, right? And I'm just getting a good idea, a good lay of the land, a good feel for things. So now I know. On the GIS also, I can also look for flood zones. If I come over here to layers, and I can scroll down where it has, I think it's under water and wetlands. And then it has flood zones. Make sure you do the effective January 17th, 25. That's the most recent one. So when I click on that, doesn't look like anything happened. I'm going to zoom out. Here, I can see that's the closest flood zone. This blue over here, that's the closest flood zone. So there's no chance that this house is in a flood zone, is there? Highly, highly doubt it. Now, if I was coming to do a listing at this property and the GIS had this close, then I would probably go back to the RE reference site and I would start looking at the state flood zone and the FEMA flood map. I'd look at both of these flood maps and I would determine whether or not this place is actually in a flood zone or not. Because it may give me different information. This is an example. If I was going to list this property, it's in a flood zone. Doesn't matter that it doesn't touch the house. Part of it's in a flood zone. They may not know that. Does that make sense on property research and going through that? Everybody? Anybody have any questions on that? We talked about the GIS. We talked about the tax record, community info. So if I was going to this property that I pulled up earlier, I typed in the address, right? And when I pull it up, and I look at the details, I'm also seeing that it's in Onslow Bay, and tells me an area of where it's at. So I'm going to do a search for homes in Onslow Bay. I'll do a quick search, and I am going to look at, I'll change the county to Onslow because there may be an Onslow Bay in a different county that I don't know about, because I don't know what subdivisions are in different counties. And I'm going to type in Onslow Bay. Boom. And then I'm just simply going to look at everything that's closed, active, and pending. And I can put a sold date back for however I want. Let's just do, say, 6 months. And that's all I'm going to do. And I'm going to come up here to the right under stats. And this gives me a general idea of what homes are selling for in Onslow Bay as far as average and median square footage. And I'm going to print this out. I'll hit print and take this with me so that if they press me for a number, I'll tell them I haven't done the full analysis yet. These are the homes that have sold in your community and what they've sold for. My whole point of coming out today is to make sure I can give you value for things that you've done to your home, right? So that'll help you. And then you can do other research in the community for if they've got a pool or a boat or an RV, start looking through all the comments and all the listings in that community to find out. Or go out and drive it is going to be your best thing. When I do that search, I'm also going to I'm going to go back to edit search, and I'm going to look at what's active, right? And I know that this house is about over 3,000 square foot. So, I want to see what my competition is. It looks like there's a bunch of new construction as the competition. So that if I'm asked, I'm probably going to want to drive out here and look at the new construction, at least drive through the community, because they've been through it. They've driven through all these homes. And if you've never been in a community that has this, and you drive up and they say, yeah, we get all this new construction in their back, and you're like, oh, really? Oh, wow. Would you hire that person to list your house? Do nothing about what's going on there? Probably not. And yes, Shabana, it's a very tedious process. I talk to you all and I tell you that you do all the work on the front end for a listing. And this is what I mean. You're doing all the research and looking at everything because you're starting to figure out how I'm going to market the property, how I'm going to price the property, what the appeal is, things like that. That's what you're thinking about. It's not just about, great, I got a listing and, I know I'm going to market this and get some buyers and make some money. Well, okay, we're going to get there. We'll talk about that next week. It's just, we got to figure out how to even price the home. So we've done all our research, right? We've looked at, verified the information. We've looked at the tax record. We've done some research in the MLS, on the GIS, and the tax record. Now we're going out to our appointment. When we go to our appointment, what I'm going to take with me, obviously, is a working with real estate agents brochure. And that's going to be one of the first things I cover with them. Because then I can ask them anything that I want to ask them. I can talk about whatever I want to talk about. I'm going to pull the tax record, take it with me, that plat, because I want to see if they've had any add-ons or done anything different than what the sketch is. I'll pull the plat map like we looked at, and just to make sure there's no issues with property lines or anything like that. Now remember, the GIS isn't specific property lines, but at least it gives me a good idea where things are. If there's maybe they added a fence or a shed, and I can look at that GIS printout and I can see that it's clearly not on their property, right? And you may want to have a conversation about that. I'll take the summary of sales to the community, and I may leave it, I may not. It really depends on the conversation. I'm going to take a notepad so I can take notes. I'm going to take a tape measure because I may need to, or my measuring tools, my 250-foot tape or my wheel, because I may need to measure the house. If they've added on to the home and they could tell you they pulled permits, maybe the tax record never updated. You don't know. Don't know. And then you can take your pre-listing or your marketing packet with you, right? I've got a couple samples of those. I think, Audrey, I've got yours. I'm going to show them that too. I hope you're okay with that. This is, and I see that you're on here, but I thought it was pretty cool. So it was the template, right, that you used in our listing templates?
It was a mix of like stuff I found from you guys and some stuff I found on Etsy as well.
Okay. So this is just an old pre-listing packet or a marketing pamphlet that I put together for me that I used. It was just branded to me when I was in sales, and just basically gives them an idea of what to expect, how I'm going to market their home, some online marketing and things like that. Why me? All sorts of stuff. This is where you brag about yourself and explain the actual selling process. You can put that in the buy or the marketing books that we have, that you can create your own marketing, where it has the glue backs or the spiral backs. It looks very professional when you go out. This is one that Audrey did using our templates and some other things that she found. She was saying, let me do it to where, there we go. So look, you can look very, very professional and not have sold very many homes. You could have sold hundreds of homes and this looks just as professional. So I don't care where you're at in your career, this is awesome. And she used this by just taking our templates and some other things she found and put it together. Put it in our binding equipment, and that's what she hands out when she goes out to a listing appointment. Very, very cool. Walks the buyer or the seller exactly what to expect through the selling process. Pretty cool. Everybody think that looks good? I think it looks really good.
Yes, that looks good.
Thank you. So we've done a lot of work already, right? Haven't earned anything, but you're earning it because you're building value when you go out. You've done all this research, and when you go out to view the home, you are like the professional. You don't know they're talking to other agents or not, right? We have no idea whether you're competing with another agent. So when you go out and you sit down with them and you look prepared and you've done all this stuff, right? Now you sit down, you go out and talk to them. While you're there, you walk in, introduce yourself, man, I'm so glad to be here, especially if they're at the house. Now, if they're not at the house, a lot of this you may not take with you. You're going to cover agency with them over the phone and that kind of stuff. But a lot of times they're going to be there. So I introduce myself. Hey, how you doing? I'm so glad to be here. I'd love to take around for you to show me around the home. There is one thing I need to cover with you before we get going. I have to follow my compliance rules and regulations. So just let me get through this real quick. And then I would love to see the house. And then you just cover agency. It takes a couple minutes. You get it out of the way. Once you get it out of the way, then you do agency right. Now, when you're walking through the home, do you think the seller is going to tell you everything that's going on? That's the best time to get all the information from them. Why they're moving, when do they need to move, all the stuff, right? Because you're just having a casual conversation. You're making a friend. So as you're walking around, and as you tour the home, you're asking them different things like, why are they selling, right? We're going to come back to the make a friend, learning the personality in DISC. You're going to look at any repairs that may be needed in the home. Now, whether you cover with them at that time or not, we'll talk about that with the DISC. But you're looking also for anything a buyer may be concerned with. I love that purple wall that's here in the living room, but a buyer's probably not going to go for that. That may be a concern. And you may talk about it then, and you may not. Again, we'll talk about that with the DISC. Anything that could affect the appraisal, right? Stair issues, no floor covering. They painted the floors, and there's no carpet, there's no flooring. A painted floor is not a finished surface. It will not pass appraisal. You go back, and there's a deck out back, and the deck is over 3 foot. It's going to have a railing. There is no railing. They added the deck. It's an awesome deck, but it doesn't have a railing. An appraiser is going to call that. You got to prepare them for that, right? As you're walking through the house, I always ask them at the beginning, as we're going through the home, please let me know if you plan on doing anything with the house, right? Do you plan on painting, doing any flooring? Just show me as we go through. Or if I see a lot of colors, then I may ask them, do you plan on painting this room? That's another good way, because if I walk in and it's very vibrant in there, I'm going to ask that in each room as I walk through that needs painted, instead of asking them up front to point it out to me. And you'll learn these techniques as you go to more listing appointments. As you're going through it, you're going to ask them, right? What stays in the house? You need to ask them, because a lot of sellers want to take all their appliances. The built-in appliances have to be there for appraisal. It's okay that they take the refrigerator. It's okay that they take the washer and dryer. Can't take the stove, right? It won't pass. Can't take the dishwasher. It's built in, right? Can't take the microwave. It's built in. I mean, if they take it out, that might be the one you could probably take out and it would pass, because it just leaves a hole. There's no wiring that comes through. It really depends on how old it is and how it's connected. But generally speaking, I would say that they can't take it. There may be a light fixture that's been in their family for years that they plan on taking down. You need to know that. There may be a shed out back and they want to take that with them. If you want to figure out, different things you need to know whether they're taking, in the listing agreement, it has a list of personal property that's supposed to stay. Read that, study that, so that when you're out there, you're looking and asking the questions on, are these the things that should stay, or are they things that should go? And then you look for other things that may have a lien. A lien means that they financed to put in a water softener and it isn't paid off. They're still making payments. That could easily affect their net sheet. That could easily affect the money that they're going to make. If there are solar panels, they are probably still making payments. So you're going to want to ask them at some point, do you still owe money on this? That's usually at the listing appointment. You can ask them as you're walking through if they're open and talking to you, but you need to ask, right? If they have brand new appliances in the house, like brand spanking new, or they say, yeah, we just replaced all these. Awesome. Are you financing those by chance? Are they, you need to ask, because that has to be paid off at closing, right? If it's not paid off at closing, look, there was a closing not long ago where they closed last year, and when the people bought the house, the shed stayed. Well, whenever about 6 months later, somebody came and repoed the shed. In the shed was a person's personal belongings that bought the house, the new owner. Tell me that's not a shit show, right? All that should have been asked and talked about, and made sure that it was paid for whenever the house closed. So let's go back to the disc piece. Everybody understand when I say disc? I talked to a lot of you about it when you join. Those that you don't know, DISC is a personality test. D stands for driver. These are people that are very, very direct, meaning they want to know, what are you going to list it for? What do you charge? What are you going to do to market? They're going to just drill you on questions. And these are people that just are very vibrant. When you walk in, they're very talkative. They want to do selfies. They do a lot of photos. They're big on social media. When you walk in their home, they're going to have a lot of flowers. Typically, not always, but typically, but they're going to have a lot of bright colors in their house. And they're just going to talk. And S, these are people that like systems, right? They're probably going to have checklists. They're going to probably be more quiet, right? They don't really like confrontation, that kind of thing. Your C's, they are definitely going to have checklists. They're probably going to have if you walk and look in the pantry and all the canned goods are all lined up, right? That's probably a high C. They're probably going to be the ones that are like asking you questions. How does this all work, right? What are my next steps? And how do I do this? They're going to want to know all the details. So when you go out and you're walking through the home and you're talking to them, you're going to figure this out. And it's important because when you go back to your listing appointment, then you know how to do your presentation. Meaning, if I'm at the house and I talk to them and I go in and we're starting to walk the home, and they're asking me questions like, well, what are you going to list it for? Well, how quick is it going to take to sell? My answer is going to be, sir, that's what I'm here for. I'm just taking a look around so I can get all that data to you. And if I'm out walking to the home and they don't want to talk about the house, they want to talk about their room, the colors, their family, everything else, that's a high I. I need to make sure I compliment them, right? I need to make sure I make them feel comfortable. This business is about relationships. We have to be able to relate to them. So when I go back out to talk to them and I'm heavy with numbers and reports, I'm going to lose a high I. They don't want to know that. I need to go back. It's going to be a short report with numbers, but it needs to be kind of flashy. And I need to make sure that I'm just like talking up their home and that kind of stuff. An S is somebody that I need to make sure when I go out, I have a system. I'm walking through and explaining exactly what the next steps are and how, and I probably a checklist with an S and a C. A C, I'm going to be there for a while, and I need to make sure that I am very descriptive when I go through things and I explain the process because they're going to want to know it. If we know that from doing the pre-listing appointment, looking at the home before we do everything else, again, we're doing all the work on the front end. When we go out, we have a much higher chance of getting that listing. Much, much higher chance. Before you leave, make sure that you make an appointment to go back. Talk to them right then. Pull your phone out. Set a day, usually in a day or two. Don't make a week. Don't give it a month. Give it a day or two. If you're newer, or you think you're going to need more time to figure things out, give yourself 2 or 3 days, right? The last thing you want to do is say, hey, it was great coming out today at 10. I can come back at 2 or 3. Does that work for you? And you haven't done anything, right? You haven't done a CMA, you haven't done a net sheet. You don't have anything else together. Nope. Give yourself some time. And then I would also ask, right, as I'm walking through, are you married? Where's your spouse? That kind of stuff. Are they moving too? Do they have orders? And then I'm going to say, are both of you going to be here for our next visit? It's because you need both decision makers there on your visit. It's important. You gotta have them there because they both need to sign, right? Now, does that happen all the time? No, but you want to make sure that you try to get that. Some things you don't do at the appointment, you don't cover price. Don't talk about price while you're there at that time. I don't care how hard they press you. That's why you don't do a CMA before you go out, right? You do a summary of sales. If they press you too hard, you just simply pull the summary of sales out and say, well, look, here's where they're selling for. How it pertains to your home is what I'm going to go find out. And when I come back, I promise you I'll have it for you. Right? Don't get into commissions. Right? I don't want to talk all about that right now. I need to show value. I need to make a friend. They say, what are you charging? How much do you charge? What's it going to cost me? I hear 6%. I hear 7%. I hear 5%. I hear 2%. I got a friend that'll do it for 0.5%. Whatever. I don't care. Okay. You don't talk about it. Say, look, that's a conversation. We come back. We actually go over the numbers. Some things I didn't ask you yet that I'm going to ask you when I come back is things like how much you owe on the home. So if you want to make sure you have a mortgage statement, that'd help us. And then we'll actually look at all the numbers then. Simple as that. So when can I come back out? And don't sit look at the back of your binders, and those of the concierge have been to the concierge. There's a section on when you get into objections. One is commissions. When you answer a question about commissions, like, what do you charge? My response is going to be, we talk about all that when I come back. So we decided that tomorrow afternoon at 3 works best for you. Awesome. And you and your wife are going to be here? Cool. All right. Well, I will see you then. Right? Move on. Don't sit there and say, yeah, we'll talk about that when I come back. Do you have any other questions? No. You're keeping that conversation open. Shut that shit down. Move on. Don't try to sell yourself to them. Don't go out and think that you have to tell them, I sell all these homes, I do all this, because they don't want to know. I hate to say they don't want to know, but they don't. It's about them right now. It's about them selling their house right now. Everything is about them. No offense, they don't really care about you, okay? They care about how you're going to sell their home and you explaining to them and showing them you're the professional. If you take your pre-listing packet out that we went over, it shows your marketing and stuff, you can leave that and that'll answer a lot of questions. I guarantee you that a lot of times they don't read them. You can take them to all of them and you give them to them. And I would go back and I would ask them, so did you have any questions? Like when I went back out for the listing appointment and I had given them the pre-listing packet, I would ask them, did you have any questions? You have a chance to look at it. A lot of times they would say no, right? Other times they would say, yeah, actually it was really cool. I didn't have anything, but I like everything I saw, or they may have questions, but usually they don't. And try not to get into too long of discussions. Look, your goal is to be there maybe 20, 30 minutes, and you need to walk the whole property. You need to walk the sheds, walk the whole house, look at all the rooms, because the room you miss is a room that they're probably maybe growing marijuana in, dope or something. I'm serious. I've seen it. I didn't go into a room and then I ended up going back and looking in the closet. It's lined with aluminum foil and fluorescent lights. Yep. You don't know it until you've been there and you've seen it. They do it. And you would never think it was them. Never, ever, ever. I don't care what rank they are. I'm telling you, you need to walk the whole thing and just peek your head in these rooms. It happens. It happens. This is a sample of the pre-listing check or the listing checklist, right? We have it in all the offices. It goes through the initial phone call, everything we went through today. It talks about the research you do. It talks about what you do while you're at the house. And it even talks about the property research. So take time to go through that. It'll really help you be prepared so that whenever you do get the phone call about somebody wanting to sell their house, you're ready to go. You at least have an idea of this section. If you don't study anything else, just study this section right here, this first section under initial call, so that if somebody calls you, you know exactly what to say and how to set the appointment. That's all you're doing when somebody calls about selling their home is you're setting an appointment. You're not trying to list their house at that point, right? You don't need to know what they owe. You don't. You haven't covered agency with them, so don't ask. If they call you, you shouldn't ask them, well, what do you owe on the house? You haven't covered agency. You just discussed price, terms, motivation. You shouldn't do that because you have not covered agency. Anybody have any questions or anything they want to add? Jenny, did I miss anything?
Not even remotely.
I,
I always say the same thing. I think the biggest thing that I always say is to send them the information in advance and ask them if they had a chance to go over it and give them questions. That's the best, or if they have any questions, it's the best way to handle it. Because usually either they're detailed people and you know it from the very beginning and you can answer all their questions up front, or they're not and they're just ready to sign with you and they're not going to ask you anything then.
Yeah. And
No.
looks, depends on their personality.
Yeah.
Tanya?
I have a question. So if you know beforehand that they're interviewing other agents and they let you know that, and they're asking you when you go to, for your interview, they're asking you right then and there about commission. You don't know if you're going to get a chance to come back or not. Would you still handle it in that way?
Absolutely, because I know I'm coming
Okay.
back. Yep. Remember, on the
Okay.
initial phone call, I've set up the process, meaning I'm going to come by and take a look at the house, right? And then I'm going to come back and do numbers. When I come back out the second time, I'm going to show you what you're going to make, how long it's going to take to sell, and what your competition is.
Okay.
And I'm also going to tell them, right? If I know from the beginning that I'm competing, here's another trick. Tell them not to disclose any information. Say, look, I understand you're interviewing other agents. And other agents may be calling you, especially if it's an internet lead type thing. Please understand they may ask you questions like, what do you owe? Or why are you selling? They may ask you things like that. They should not ask you that until they cover something called agency with you. I'm going to cover that whenever I come out to meet with you because you haven't told me anything that I can hold against you. So if you tell them that, they could probably hold that against you if they have a buyer for your home. So don't disclose any of that information. You have already set yourself ahead of anybody else that is coming out to look at that house because I guarantee you there's a lot of agents, a lot of seasoned agents that are going to call them or go out to see them, and they're going to first thing they're going to ask them is, what do they owe? And as soon as they hear that and they know they haven't covered agency, you've already put in their head they're not following protocol like they should. They're not following our ethics. They're not following our rules and regulations, right?
Right.
So set the tone up front. Follow the process. Set up your process and know these little things. And as soon as I hear, right, or if I even think that I'm competing, I'm going to tell them, look, by the way, if you talk, I don't say when you talk or anything like that. I say if you talk, because I don't want to put in their head to interview other agents. I'm simply
Right.
going to say, if you talk to other agents about your home, don't disclose any information to them because they can hold against you. They can use it against you when you get ready to sell. We have to comply with this thing called agency. It's part of our code of ethics. It's part of our real estate commission rules and guidelines. And I have to cover that with you before I ask those questions. And I will cover that with you when I come out and meet with you.
Okay.
Yeah. I love it when I'm competing because as soon as I tell them that, I've won. Because I guarantee the other people are asking that. And they appreciate the thoroughness. They really do. You going out to look at the home to make sure you can give value for something. I can't tell you how many listings I've won over people because of having a process and telling them that up front. It works. All right, y'all. Anybody have any questions? Nothing? Did y'all learn anything today? Anything at all?
Yes, yes.
I hope so. I know it was a lot today, right? Again, refer back to the listing checklist so that helps you get your foundation to start. And then as you build your process and systems, you're not going to remember everything I said on how to respond. That's just experience. But you'll learn as you go out. Having an initial protocol, an initial process is going to help you more than anything else. Right? Going to help you way more than anything else. All right, y'all. That is all.